Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. Our guest today is Sybille Andersen, a certified professional nurse midwife. She brought two of her mothers along with her, and they also brought their babies that she helped bring into the world. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Sybille, I will let you introduce your guest, including
my little talkative friend over here.
Right.
This is Josephine, and she's the daughter of Hannah Cornelius, and I think I'm going to have to pass her over. Here's your blanket. And this is Nicole Gratton, and this is Iris. And they were both born at home this past summer. And it's a great start to my new practice up here in Vermont.
Right. And would you like to introduce her again? Because since she's introducing herself.
This is Josephine.
Okay. Well, it was great having you on, Sybille, and thank you for inviting your guests, your mothers, and their children. And we might be taking, occasionally one of your mothers, I understand, might get up and walk away if need be, but the sound of babies, doesn't bother me.
That's what babies is all about.
So don't hesitate to sit right here because the viewers, they understand. Okay, Sybille, these children were born at home. Now most babies now are born in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Why do some people opt to have them at home?
Well, I think it's a good question to ask them, but my first thought would be just the comfort of your own familiar surroundings, and as a result, that reduces to many women the sense of fear of the unknown and fear of birthing in general. But they would probably have been.
And what about you?
My first daughter was born in the hospital, and she ended up being born via C-section.
Right.
And so for this birth, I really wanted to experience a vaginal birth and a natural birth, and I just felt that working with a midwife increased my chances of having that come true for me. So, and it did.
Now, when it comes to, that brings up an interesting question then, is there's always been that debate that's gone back and forth whether you can have a natural birth after a C-section. My wife did. Mm-hmm. But where do we stand, where does society stand today when it comes to that topic?
Well, generally, the past opinion was that it was fine for women to have vaginal births after cesareans, and there was a period of time more recently where there was some fear brought into the whole situation due to a complicated story, or more than one story, of complications with women who had vaginal births after cesareans in the hospital. And so as a result, the ACOG had made a statement which they recommended and kind of insisted on the fact that a hospital be prepared to have emergency anesthesiology services, and a C-section ready within a certain amount of time. And so many hospitals, as a result, couldn't provide that kind of care because they could only afford so many on staff at one time. And many hospitals decided that they couldn't afford that, and so that's why there was a policy of no vaginal births after cesareans for, but actually in the state of Vermont we're lucky because according to the regs, even for women who choose home birth, they can have a vaginal birth after cesarean as long as there's certain criteria that is met. And I know Nicole and I went through that together and she fulfilled those requirements.
I figured the insurance companies must have came in there somewhere because they always.
It's a long story, and I'm not an expert about that whole.
Now, how was it? Because my wife, she hasn't had a child for 24 years, but she had our twins by cesarean section, and then she had our daughter by natural birth, and she said she'd take a natural birth any day because of the recovery period, just from cesarean. Did you find that?
I don't know about the recovery period, but just the empowerment that comes from having a vaginal birth is worth it, and I would do it again. Just, our bodies are made to do this, and not having had that option the first time around, I really kind of mourned that loss. And so being able to do it this time was really, really powerful, just in terms of how I feel about myself.
Now, Hannah, how come you chose? Is this your first time you've had one at home?
This is my second at home. So this is my fourth child, and my first child, I was very much interested in home birth, and was reading Ina May Gaskin books, which I don't know if you know who she is, but she's has a farm in Tennessee, and it's a commune basically where they all have home births, and she's very inspiring, and she's written several books about natural childbirth. So I read those books while I was pregnant with my first child, and I was very interested, but I also just kind of felt like with my first I wanted to be in a hospital. Well, I don't regret that I had my first child in the hospital, but the whole time I knew that I would have been more comfortable at home, because there's so many people that come in the room that you don't know, people are in and out that you're uncomfortable with. There's a lot of interventions, which in the moment of you're vulnerable to all these things because you're so in it, and so you end up having these interventions, and I ended up having I was induced, which was very painful, and I had an epidural, and after I had the baby, I knew that the next one I would want to be home, that I wanted to be somewhere where I chose who was there, and I chose the care provider, and I could not kind of fall prey to these interventions that were not necessary. And so my second birth, I planned, I knew from the beginning that that's what I would do, and it turns out that it was something that I could very much do at home naturally, that there was not a moment that I needed an intervention, that I could very much even do it myself with a midwife there, of course. But and so we had a wonderful birth with our second child. And so, I of course planned that I would do that if I had any other births.
Right. And now, until now, have we had somebody until you arrived?
Yeah, there's always the possibility for women in this region to have home births if they sought it out.
Right.
There are many midwives in the state of Vermont and in New Hampshire that would service this area in the past.
Okay.
And there were probably midwives that lived here and came and went, I think, in decades ago, came and went.
Ours traveled an hour to get to us, so this is the first time in recent years that we've had one right in Newport.
Right.
And at my birth, I had a second midwife, and she was based out of Montpelier, and she, on her website, says that she would travel an hour and a half to get to a birth, so she's a possibility for this area.
So they would they just up and come when the time.
When the phone call is made,
Right.
depending on what the story is, that's when it's like someone dealing a deck of cards. This is the situation, and you make decisions in that way.
You know what's interesting, a little off the topic, but since I write history for a living, I got to mention it, is one of our first women doctors in this country, one of the early ones, I should say, was Rachel Allen of Charleston. And she even, some of her diaries, this was back in the 1800s, she actually practiced mostly in Lowell, Mass, even though she was from Charleston. And her diaries talk about a lot of stuff that you could relate to.
Sure.
It just, whether it was health care or delivering babies.
It wasn't too long ago that doctors were doing house calls and doing home births. It's not that far in our past.
Yeah, because we have a lot of people. We have a lot of people in this area who were born by home birth, because if you didn't live in the Newport Derby area, or say Barton, if you lived out in the outskirts, you basically you were born at home. Like I have a niece who's her husband's grandmother, who's in her 90s and very with it, is she talked about when she would give birth, she would, when she knew she was going to labor, she'd walk across the road over to a family member's house who knew how to deliver babies, and she said it wasn't any real big deal.
Well, when you have that kind of an attitude about birth and take it so easily, it allows for easier deliveries as well. They weren't afraid because it was part of common daily life, and was not uncommon for young women to assist their mothers or their sisters in labor too. So they had a true sense of what it was, and when it came down to their turn, it was a lot less fearful. I think our culture now has a way of hiding the normalcy of birth from us, and the way it's portrayed in the media is also in a lot of ways unfair, because it creates a mindset for young women to be afraid of the process.
Well, in a sense, so it's actually, they do that on both ends of the spectrum. You know, the fear of life, you know, bringing life in, and the fear of,
Yeah, sure.
you know, just
Death.
the death
Yeah.
part. So, Sybille, what brought you here?
Oh, many things. My husband and I had been wanting to move from where we lived in Massachusetts for quite a while. And in our search for what was ideal for us, the Northeast Kingdom seemed to satisfy that and a little bit more. But there was a need for a midwife. That was the first thing I did. Was I did a search and wrote to New Hampshire and Vermont midwives and asked them if they knew of an area that was underserved, or where there could be a use for a home birth midwife, and many of them pointed me towards this area, and so that was important. There's the lake where I used to live. I lived on an island for 35 years, so for me water was really important. The mountains was really important because I grew up skiing and I missed that by living on an island.
Yeah, but you're not. According to a mutual friend of ours, Dr. Les Lockridge,
Oh.
you're not just a skier. You are one mean skier. As in, he says you are an outstanding.
Thank you. Well, I've been skiing since I could walk.
Right.
Yeah, so that's probably, it made it easy. And then there was the fact that there is the border right here where there are French-speaking people on the other side, and for me, there's a lot of history of French, origins in this area as well. And being that I'm also French from France, and my mom and my dad, were French or are French, and I just felt I needed to be closer to French-speaking people, and this place had all these wonderful things and lots of wonderful sports that you can do all year round, which I didn't have where I used to live.
And you've really ingrained yourself in the area for such a short period of time. You've been here. Actually, as I was telling your two mothers here, we met by fluke because you had just lost your dog.
Yeah. I think that's the part of the wonderfulness about this area too. It's just people are very warm and welcoming, and
you just loved my golden retrievers.
Yes.
And one thing, and then I introduced you to Dr. Lockridge, and then you've really started making some.
I was making efforts to connect with caregivers, and he was one of the first people that responded to my letters, so it was really great.
I'm actually in the process of writing an article about Dr. Peck, who just retired from being an OBGYN for years, and they're having a really challenging time finding somebody to replace him. Has that meant, do you view yourself as just another, you view yourself as another option to help fill in the void?
I think that it's really not my place to say that. It's more a woman, if she feels comfortable with the thought of having a home birth, that's what's important. I'm not here to push my agenda of what I do on anyone. So I really can't speak for what's going on in the hospital, because it's really a very different place.
Very different experience.
It's like another world in many ways. I'm so glad that we can communicate with each other, but it's what's good for one woman is not good for another, and then they can.
Now, were either one of you in any of your pregnancies, were you ever encouraged not to have home birth? Like, is there any, do medical professionals who work, other medical professionals, do they respect your decision? Or were you encouraged not to?
I was never encouraged not to.
Neither for me. And I did have some appointments with the hospital staff, and again, it's the choice of the mother, and I think that our hospital staff respects that as well.
Yeah, because Dr. Peck, I think, has served this area very well for so many years. He can look out into a crowd, and if he looks out into a crowd, he's going to be seeing a lot of faces.
I'm sure he can't even walk down the street without seeing somebody that he's caught. So.
No, that's certainly no. He's going to be a huge loss. But on the other hand, it's really great to have you here because I don't think it was ever really a topic of discussion. I don't even remember this even being an option when my kids were born 29 years and then 24 years ago. I'm not sure if I just weren't hearing the message or...
I think that people who choose home birth have a way of finding out what they need to find out. It's not like it's underground or secretive. It's just that it's not publicized in that same sort of way. It's not so obvious. And so people do search for their midwives, and they find them because where there's a will, there's a way. And if you have that in your mind, that's what you want to do, you'll find a way to do it.
But do you think we've gone through cycles? Oh, it's like with nursing. We went through a period where everybody nursed, then everybody bottle fed, and now we're back to everybody nursing. Well, not everybody nursing, but
it's totally the right way to go for nutrients and for your baby's health. That makes sense, and I think it's just people are learning to become more open and acknowledge that there's a well-educated midwife who knows what she's doing, and a well-educated client who knows what her choices are and has chosen what she wants, work together as a team. And I monitor pretty well so that I know if there's any potential complications happening throughout pregnancy or through the labor. So we're on top of things.
So what is the role of the midwife? What role did you have with her throughout your pregnancy?
Well, she was a lot like a family member, actually. We saw her on a regular basis. We loved her. We welcomed her into our home. We had her over for dinner a couple times. She monitored us, but she also became a very close friend. And she was very responsible. She knew what she was doing. We felt like we were in very good hands. But it also felt like she respected the natural process of childbirth. So she knew when she needed to worry and when she needed to not worry. And so it was, she played it was a wonderful role. It was great.
So it was in a home environment versus a sterile environment.
She visited our home. Every visit was in our home, and it was wonderful to be able to be at home for the whole process.
And you miss it now. Like now that I don't see
It's
Sybille on a monthly basis or a weekly basis or a daily basis. You're kind of like, wait, where's Sybille? I miss her.
Is there any do you do follow-up with the mothers?
Oh yeah. Well, I could describe a little bit what I do. Is, we see each other once a month through the 28th week or 30th week, and every 2 weeks until 36 weeks of pregnancy, and then that's when a mother's considered term and she could deliver at any time after that. And we see each other on a weekly basis until the baby's born, and those visits last a good hour, if not more, spending lots of time talking.
We try to keep her longer so that we could talk with her.
It was fun. It's fun. And then afterwards, the postpartum care, I stay as long as after the baby's born, as long as everyone's stable, then I leave, and then the next day we come, and then 3 days later, or day 3, and could be a week later, 10 days, 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, and 6 weeks later, I visit them in their homes. So, to check out, make sure everyone's fine.
I have to say the most positive part for us was actually the aftercare, was how often she visited us, how long she stayed with us after we had the baby, and made sure that the baby had nursed and that everything was okay. And we felt just like we were tucked into our own little nest, and like Sybille was it was just more care than you would possibly get in a hospital. So the aftercare for us was the most ideal part of it.
When a baby's born in the hospital, typically the pediatrician, I believe the pediatrician's right there or there soon after. When does the baby, when they're home birth, when do they see a pediatrician? Or do they see one?
Yep. I see Dr. Tatum, and she wanted to see Iris shortly afterward, but we waited until week 2.
Right.
But again, Sybille has done all the checks to make sure that she's healthy and safe, and then at week 2 we went there and got checked out by Dr. Tatum, and we're on
I've been doing a series on the history of healthcare in the Northeast Kingdom, and most of the older doctors before you had an OBGYN said that an uncomplicated birth really, that most births are relatively uncomplicated, and so do you find that to be the case?
Well, since I've been studying childbirth, the saying always in my mind stays, like one of the first books I ever read was, and even in the EMT textbooks, because I've done that before too, is 97% approximately of birth, as long as it's allowed to unfold as nature had intended, will be uncomplicated. Doesn't matter whether it's 6 hours long or 24 or 36 hours long. If you leave it alone and just let nature take its course, it's the safest way. And there you go.
Well, the last baby I had on my show, nature took its course, but the mother had other babies, and she knew she thought she was in early stage labor.
Yeah, well,
and
sometimes
whoops,
they come fast.
born in a vehicle. So
Power to her.
The father was just like wowed by how she was just so calm. It's just she caught it, brought the baby up, and from a guy's perspective, I'm going to tell you, if it was up to guys to actually have the kids, the human race would become extinct. Because I don't think we can handle what you women go through. Do you plan on having any more? And if so, do you plan on having natural birth at home?
I would like to have another child, and yes, I'd be giving Sybille a call. That's not right now at all. We've got our hands full at home, but down the line, yes.
She's got another little one at home too.
Yes.
And 4 will be good. 4 will be good.
But we were talking about the bit of the irony here is I graduated with Josephine's father from high school, so he has a baby that is still nursing, while both of my sons, who are now 29, are college graduates and moved out. So we kind of did the baby thing a little bit different.
Yeah, you started young, really young.
Yeah, we did, and he started a little on the upper range.
In his own way.
So, do you think more people, well, I'll ask all three of you this, do you think more people are learning about the joys and wonders of home birth now? Because I'm starting to hear more people talk about home births.
Well, I think also your ears are probably more in tune to it now because we met each other.
Right.
And so then it's gotten on your radar in a way.
Well, I think part of it also is because my kids' friends are childbirth age.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other thing is even though I'm not going to be having any more kids, my kids are at the age where they are having kids and their friends are having kids. So I think that's another thing.
And for, say, each of these women whose family have now been exposed to the idea that never would have thought of it either, that's when you have a home birth, you're educating at least a dozen people about the idea and opening up their eyes to the safety of it and the beauty of it as well. So it's just kind of spreads like, I don't know, ripple effect.
You've told me too that that you've been welcomed to some degree by the medical community, which I think is good.
And it's important. I mean, openness and communication is the key to everything. That's what makes it safe, is being able to ask for advice when necessary, or to consult, or to transfer care when needed. That's the whole point. It has to be smooth, and it has to be non-hostile. And I think it's really great, and
Right.
it's the way it should
Now,
be.
if you have if one of your mothers, or if one of your mothers should end up in the hospital, do you do rounds, or how does that work?
Oh, no, I mean, I don't work at the hospital, but of course I don't leave their side.
Right. Okay.
And then as long as I'm not in the way of the hospital staff, but then I keep on the relationship and we continue care if that's what the client wants. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, but
I don't know how that works.
yeah, I honor my commitment to the family throughout, no matter what the outcome is.
So have you've delivered a lot of babies in your life?
Yeah, I guess.
So
It's all relative, there are people that have done thousands and I've done hundreds, so it's
is there a lot of the babies that you in their mothers and fathers that you maintain a relationship with?
Oh yeah. I was thinking, because, being new here, I was realizing as these women we were waiting for their babies to be born, that I felt like, for me, being a newcomer here, that, like you said, these people are my family now,
Now, do you think she will be always in some way part of your lives?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't see how she couldn't be.
And do you feel now? You both had hospital births. Do you feel the same way about your hospital doctor, or was it different?
I think that all the prenatal care and time that Sybille puts into her mother's is a real piece that keeps you connected. When I was with the hospital, they're busy.
Right.
You get maybe 10 minutes with the provider, but with Sybille, she comes in and you're there for an hour and a half. So you really build a great connection and trust and friendship with her. So.
That this is off the topic, but it isn't in a way. Is the one thing I can't figure out is the whole debate about public nursing. I've never been able to understand why there's still people in this world who are
Find it
offended.
shocking?
Yeah, because if let's be real, is you see more of a woman's body in a bathing suit most of the time than you're going to see when somebody's nursing. Is there really that many people now who take exception to you nursing?
In public.
Yeah, in public.
I've never felt like anybody had an issue with me nursing in public. But
Me either.
But you see, you see that.
rare story.
I have heard a lot of stories about it. Thankfully, it's never happened to me. But yeah, I'm not really quite sure why why it is that way. But
It's more the mindset of the observer that needs to turn their head if it upsets them.
In a strange way, I just kind of think it's a cool thing. Like when my kids were born, my wife, I will say, we were just on because nursing was just coming. She had we had our children when there was more of a move back to nursing. And she tried with our twins, but it didn't work. And maybe today, because there's more education, she would have been able.
Definitely, there's more support.
Right. So, what more would you like? We have just a few more minutes. What more would you like to say about either about Sybille, about just your experience, or anything?
well,
Putting everybody on the
there was a
spot.
moment when we talked about childbirth and the mindset of it, and I had wanted to say just that how much I believe, having a peaceful, easy childbirth is about your mindset. So if you go into it feeling like this is a scary thing and we're going to have a catastrophe, I think you're much more likely to have a catastrophe than if you trust your body and recognize it as something that can be natural and peaceful that our bodies were made to do. Then that's what's going to happen. That's how it'll most likely be. So,
And I would just say, as Sybille was saying, all births are different.
Yeah.
Mine was a little bit longer than Hannah's. But throughout that, I never felt rushed to the home birth, and everything went very, very smoothly. And I don't know, just the feeling afterward was just amazing. I would want that for any woman. So if we could make it more, even just in a hospital setting, but just being able to do it and know that your body did it is really, really important.
Is our home birth, is that covered by insurance?
It depends on everyone's different types of health insurance, obviously, and the different package deals they've gotten, or whether someone's in network or out of network. It's very complicated. But
on the other hand, I have to believe that probably home birth. I hate to talk money, but some viewers might be one. But they're probably a lot less expensive, so you might be able to afford it without insurance.
well, it's complicated because there's the agenda of the insurance companies and what they want from midwives if they cover them,
Right.
if they, and what they want the midwives to spend for malpractice insurance so they can get that. And then there are the policies that cover some services like the prenatal and postpartum care, but not the actual birth itself. Or it's beyond my understanding because in reality, yes, a home birth is a lot less expensive for society than a hospital birth. And it would make sense that it would be supported by insurance companies because it saves them money in the long run, but they don't see it that way.
Boy, it's amazing how good our two smallest guests have been, and we're just about now their names again. Now Josephine,
Iris.
and Iris, and no, they've done Joseph, but they both have a lot of hair. Actually, more hair than I do. I have it back. I'm reverting back. So, okay, we're just about ready to wrap up. Sybille, what are your
Thank you for having us. I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you.
If somebody wants to contact you, Sybille, just to learn more about
Sure, they can.
midwife or maybe your services, how should they contact
They
you?
could send me an email and look me up at mountainlakemidwifery.com, or give me my phone, and contact information is on the website, so it's probably the easiest way. So it's mountainlakemidwifery.com.
Okay. Anything else?
Not I.
Any final words from our youngest guests?
I hope not.
Josephine started off a little not unsure about coming on the show, but she seems to be sleeping happily now. And Iris, she pulled it off, and with her hair sticking straight up, I like that hairdo.
Thank you. I call them my kingdom catches.
Okay.
That'll be the new
do you
name.
look forward to your next ones too?
Yeah,
Your next,
totally.
your
I
next.
look forward to everyone. So.
Yeah. And these are kind of like they're kind of like your kids or your grandkids, extended family.
Yeah, definitely extended family.
Okay, it was great to have you all on, and when you're ready to come back on to talk about something else, because I think the more options we have here in the Northeast Kingdom, I think it's great.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you.
And thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.